I had not expected her to still be there. The flood waters had come down from the Ashfin Heights 3 days before my steward brought me word of the stranded traders. A small convoy, 4 merchants and their mules, caught on the Grafin Road when the pass washed out. Standard procedure: offer temporary lodging in the outer courtyard, assess each traveler's pack seal and garrison bond, admit the registered ones to the hold's inner hall, and turn the rest to the covered way station at the east gate until the road cleared. Garrison Commander Voss had processed them all by the time I came down from the high tower. 3 traders with valid seals, a cloth merchant, a salt broker, a cartographer, were already warming themselves at the inner hearth. The 4th had no seal. Packless wanderer, Voss told me, his tone carrying the particular flatness of a man who considered the matter closed. No garrison bond, no pack registration, no verified trade charter. I offered the way station. She declined the way station and asked if she might sit in the outer courtyard instead. I told her she might sit there until the road cleared, at which point she is to move on. I looked into the outer courtyard, through the iron-barred passage window. She was sitting on the low stone ledge beside the herb bed, the one my steward had been meaning to repair for 3 seasons, the one where a late frost had heaved the border stones loose, and the thyme and winter marjoram had grown sideways into the gravel. She had her pack open on the ground beside her. She was not looking at the hold, not looking at the gate, not looking at anything in particular. She was pressing a loose stone back into the border of the herb bed with both hands, as if she had decided, in the absence of anything else to do, that the stone should be where it belonged. She had seeds in her lap. I could see the small paper packets, folded at the corners the way village seed keepers fold them. Her name, I asked. Voss checked his ledger. Marin, no family designation recorded. She gave me a list of the herbs she carries for trade, said she could leave samples if I wanted verification of non-toxicity. He said it the way a man says something he found faintly absurd. I told her that wouldn't be necessary. I watched her press the second stone back into place. She did it carefully. She did not look up to see if anyone was watching. Leave her in the courtyard, I said. Post no guard over her. If she wants water or bread from the kitchen, she may have it. Voss's expression said he had opinions about this. He did not voice them. He was a careful man. I went back to the high tower and did not think about her again. Or I told myself I did not think about her. The wolves were the first sign, and I missed it entirely. The way a man misses the first sound of ice cracking under his boots, because he has decided the ice is solid. I kept 12 wolves at Grafin Hold. They were not pets and they were not ornaments. They were the oldest of the pack's bonded line, the wolves who had run with my grandfather's grandfather and whose blood carried the Hold's history in a way that no stone wall could. They were also, I will say plainly, difficult. Not vicious. They had never harmed anyone, but they were selective in a way that had long since become a point of some delicacy with my council. In 11 years of rule, they had refused every woman my council brought to Grafin. Not refused as in growled and backed away, refused as in simply vanished to the far pen whenever a presentation was arranged, or stood at the fence with a flatness in their eyes that communicated, with total precision, that they found the entire proceeding uninteresting. 3 fence posts broken in one memorable incident, with a duchess who had been very insistent about approaching them. 4 presentations ended early because the wolves would not come within 40 feet of the woman in question. My council had stopped scheduling presentations. I had told them quietly that I preferred it that way. My wolf, the part of me that moves below thought, below decision, the part that knows things before I do, had been silent on the subject for 11 years. Not unhappy, not pining, simply quiet, the way a room is quiet when nothing in it has been touched for a long time. I noticed, on the afternoon of the second day, that 2 of the younger wolves were sitting at the inner fence of the outer courtyard. Not at the far pen, at the fence facing in. I looked from the parapet. Marin was on her knees at the herb bed, working a root loose from the compacted gravel with a small tool. She had not appeared to notice the wolves. She was talking quietly to herself, or to the root, or to nothing. I was too high up to hear it. I watched for a moment. The wolves were very still. I told myself they were curious about the mules in the way station. Wolves sometimes came to the fence when there were large animals nearby. It was not unusual. I went inside. By the morning of the third day, 6 of the 12 were at the fence. I came down to the inner yard at dawn because I had not slept well, a thing I attributed to the pressure in the air that comes before a second storm, which the Ashfin weather often delivers without warning. I stood at the passage window and looked out. 6 wolves in a half circle at the inner fence, sitting, not pacing. The big gray male, Brennan, had his chin resting on the lowest fence rail. The 2 youngest, barely past their first winter, were pressed together at the corner of the fence like children leaning around a doorway to see something in the next room. Marin was at the herb bed again. She had the border stones all straight now. I could see from here that she had cleaned the gravel, repressed the edges, cleared the dead winter growth from the crowns of the plants. She was placing something in small holes she had made with a stick. Seeds, I thought. She was planting seeds in my herb bed as if she lived here, as if this were a thing anyone had asked her to do. She said something. I could not hear it. One of the wolves, the young female Solon, made a small sound in answer. My chest did something I could not immediately name. I went to the garrison office and asked Voss, more sharply than I intended, whether the road assessment had come back from the Eastern Post yet. Voss said it had not. The pass was still flooded. It would be, by the mountain runner's estimate, another 4 to 6 days before the road was passable. I thanked him. I went back to the high tower. My wolf was not silent anymore. It was not loud, not urgent. It was the opposite of loud. It was very, very attentive, the way my wolf gets attentive to a sound that is too far away to identify yet, but that it has already decided is important. I had not felt my wolf attentive in 11 years. I told it plainly that the woman in the courtyard was a packless wanderer with seeds in her pockets, and that wolves sitting at a fence was not a meaningful event, and that the herb bed needed to be replanted regardless of who did it. My wolf listened to all of this politely. Then it went back to paying attention to the outer courtyard. On the 3rd evening, the mate mark ached. I had heard about this from my father, from my grandfather's journals, from the pack histories that Grafin Hold kept in the sealed room off the library. The mate bond in our bloodline does not arrive all at once. It arrives in pieces over time like a tide, first a sound at the edge of hearing, then a warmth, then an ache that lives in the wrist bones where the mark will eventually bloom if the bond completes. I had never felt the ache before. I was at my writing desk when it arrived, a low, deep ache in both wrists, not painful, not alarming, simply there, the way an old scar sometimes makes itself known when the weather changes. I set down my pen and looked at my wrists. Nothing visible. The skin was smooth. No mark. I held both wrists and breathed for a moment. Then I picked up my pen and went back to the correspondence. I wrote 3 more letters. The ache did not go away. At midnight, I went to the window of the high tower that faces the outer courtyard. Below, the courtyard was dark except for the small lamp the kitchen girl had left on the waystation hook, a courtesy for anyone awake in the night. The herb bed was a dark shape against the pale gravel. All 12 wolves were at the fence. Not 6, all 12. The great silver lead wolf, Kale, the one who had not approached a fence in 9 years, who had broken 2 fence posts in the Duchess incident, who ate from my hand and no one else's, was standing at the center of the fence line, his silver head low, his eyes fixed on the darkness of the outer courtyard. I could just make out a shape on the stone ledge by the herb bed, Marin sitting in the dark, not doing anything as far as I could see, simply sitting. I stood at the window for a long time. I went to bed. I did not sleep. The fourth morning was clear. The fog had pulled back from the Ashfin for the first time in a week, and the courtyard was sharp with light, the kind of cold, flat, early light that makes everything look like it has been cut out of stone. I came down before the household was fully awake, before Voss's first patrol, before the kitchen fires were fully built up. I came down because I could not stay in the high tower any longer, and I knew it. The inner courtyard was empty. The wolves were in the far pen, which was usual for early morning. I told myself I was going to the garrison office to check the flood report. I passed through the passage door into the outer courtyard. Marin was there. She was kneeling at the herb bed, her pack on the ground open beside her, and she was doing the last of what she had apparently been doing all 4 days, finishing. The border was straight, the seeds were in, and she was pressing a final layer of fine gravel down over the planting with the flat of her hand, smoothing it the way you smooth a blanket over someone sleeping. She looked up when she heard my boots on the stone. She did not startle. She did not jump to her feet or drop anything or arrange her expression into something careful. She simply looked at me the way a person looks at someone they have been aware of for several days without making it anyone's business. "The time will come back," she said. "The roots are old and they're deep. They don't need much. Just the border stones back in place so the gravel doesn't choke them." I stood in the courtyard light and looked at her. She was exactly as I had seen from the parapet, small, unhurried, wearing a heavy wool coat that was too big for her across the shoulders, her dark hair pulled back without ceremony. There was dried earth on her hands and a smear of it across one knee. She had the face of someone who had been outside in all weathers for a long time, not weathered, not worn, simply present in the way that people who live close to the ground often are. "You've been doing this for 4 days," I said. The bed needed doing. She looked back at the herb bed and made a small adjustment with her thumb to a seed packet she hadn't yet placed. "I had time." "You had no obligation." "No." She seemed to consider this for a moment, as if the word obligation was an interesting one to have applied to the situation. But the time was trying very hard with a broken border. It seemed worth helping. Something in my wrists ached, not loudly, just quietly, like a name you keep almost remembering. "You could have asked to come inside," I said, "out of the cold." Commander Voss made the policy clear. She said it without heat, without complaint, the tone of someone who has learned to distinguish between what is and what should be, and to address only what she can actually change. "The way station has a roof. I was fine." "Voss made the policy clear," I said slowly, "because you have no pack seal." "I have no pack seal," she agreed. She sat back on her heels and looked up at me again. The early light was full on her face. Her eyes were quiet, not submissive, not afraid, not performing anything, just quiet. "I grew up in a settlement pack on the South Ashfin edge. They dissolved when I was 17. The elders dispersed the bond after the flooding season took too many of the bonded line. I've traded seeds and herbs since then. I keep meaning to register with a garrison, but the seasons move quickly, and registration requires a stay of 6 weeks in one place. And you don't stay 6 weeks anywhere." "I haven't yet," she said it without apology. I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at the herb bed, which was, I had to admit, in better shape than it had been in 3 years. "You'll have breakfast," I said. "In the inner hall, not the way station." She blinked, a small, genuine blink, not theatrical surprise, just the honest expression of someone who had not expected this and was deciding how to receive it. "That's very generous," she said, "but the road may clear in a day or 2. I don't need." "You'll have breakfast," I said again. And then, because I was the alpha king of Grafen Hold, and I had not gotten where I was by being uncertain about things I had already decided, I walked back to the passage door. After a moment, I heard her stand up, fold her remaining seed packets, and follow. She ate breakfast in the inner hall with the 3 registered merchants, who watched her with the polite wariness of people who have concluded she is harmless but are reserving final judgment. She ate without rushing, without making conversation no one had invited, and she thanked the kitchen girl by name. She had apparently learned the kitchen girl's name, and the name of the stable hand, and the name of the 3rd wolf in the pen, who she referred to as the spotted one with the torn ear, who came to the fence first. This information was conveyed to me by my steward, Henrik, who delivered it the way Henrik delivers all information he considers potentially relevant, quietly, without editorial comment, while appearing to be doing something else. "She knows the wolves' names," I said. "She asked me their names on the 2nd day," Henrik said, adjusting a candle holder on the sideboard. "I told her." "You told her?" she asked. He moved the candle holder a fraction of an inch to the left. She seemed genuinely interested, not as a strategy. People who are being strategic about wolves usually ask about the most impressive one first. She asked about the spotted one with the torn ear. The spotted one with the torn ear was Pell, the oldest of the 12, who had been at Grayfen since before I inherited the hold. Pell was not impressive by any standard a person assessing the hold's wolves for political purposes would apply. I thought about this for longer than I should have. The wolves came to her at midday. I was in the council chamber, a quarterly report on the Ashfin border patrols, 3 of my senior commanders, and a map that was 3 years out of date and needed updating. I was listening to Commander Brennel describe the patrol rotation when my wolf went so still inside me that I lost the thread of what Brennel was saying entirely. Not tense, not alarmed, still, the way a still pool is still, the way the air goes still in the exact moment before something lands in it. I excused myself from the council chamber with a calmness I was not fully feeling and walked to the inner fence passage. Below, in the outer courtyard, in the flat midday light, Marin was sitting on the stone ledge again. She was mending something, a tear in her pack strap, from the look of it, with a needle and heavy thread. She was not performing anything. She was just mending her pack strap. The wolves were in the courtyard with her. Not at the fence, in the courtyard. The gate between the inner and outer pens had been left open for the morning airing, standard practice. The wolves could move between the pens as they liked. They had apparently chosen to come through. All 12 in the outer courtyard, around the stone ledge. Pell, the oldest, was lying across her feet. 2 of the young ones, Solon and the male she called Kip. I didn't know who had told her that name, possibly Henrik. Possibly Pell himself, through some communication I was not party to, were pressed against her legs on either side. The mid-ranked wolves were arranged in a loose arc around the ledge, sitting, facing outward, in the posture that wolves use when they are keeping watch over something they have decided requires watching. Brennan, the big gray male, was lying beside the herb bed with his chin on the fresh gravel, as if keeping watch over that too. And Kale, the great silver lead wolf, who had not let anyone but me touch him in 9 years, who had stood at the center of the fence line at midnight watching the darkness, was sitting 3 feet from the stone ledge, very still, his silver head level, his pale eyes on Marin's hands. She was mending her pack strap. She said something, quietly, not looking up. I could not hear the words through the stone passage. One of the young wolves made a small sound. She answered it. Her needle moved in and out of the leather with the same unhurried patience she applied to everything else. My wrists ached. Not quietly this time. Deeply, fully, like a chord struck on an instrument I had not known I carried. I put my hand on the stone wall of the passage to steady myself. The stone was cold. I stood there for a long time, watching. I did not go down. I went back to the council chamber and told Brennel to finish the patrol rotation report without me, that I had a matter requiring attention. Brennel, who had been my garrison commander for 8 years and had seen me through 2 border conflicts, a contested succession, and a winter that killed a third of the Ashfin settlements, said, "Yes, my lord," with the tone of a man who has many more questions than he will ever ask. I went back to the high tower. I opened my grandfather's journals. I found the entry I was looking for on the 14th page of the 3rd volume. A winter my grandfather had written about, not because it was the most dramatic winter of his reign, but because it was the winter his mate Bond completed, and he had wanted to write it down carefully, in case any of his blood ever needed to know what it felt like from the inside. He wrote, "The wolves knew before I did. That is the oldest thing, older than the mark, older than the ceremony, older than the vow. The wolves know first because they have not learned to argue with what they feel. They go to her and they stay, and the reason is as simple and as inarguable as gravity." When I finally understood what they were doing, I felt as if I had been sleeping for a very long time, and something, not a sound, not a voice, just a warmth, had leaned down and spoken my name. I closed the journal. I sat in the high tower with my grandfather's words in my chest and the ache in my wrists, and I looked out the window at the cold, flat light of the Ashfin afternoon, and I let myself know what I had been not knowing since the moment I saw her pressing a stone back into the border of an herb bed, because it was where it belonged. My mate was in the outer courtyard, mending a pack strap, with all 12 of my wolves arranged around her like a family that had finally come home. I went down at dusk. The courtyard was quieter, the light going gray and long, the fog beginning to creep back in from the marsh edge. 3 of the wolves had returned to the inner pen for the night. 9 had not. Marin was no longer on the stone ledge. She had moved to the way station doorway where there was a lamp, and she was writing in a small bound ledger. An inventory, I thought, of her seed stock, taking account of what she had used, what she had left. She looked up when she heard my boots. She watched me cross the courtyard without saying anything, which I found I was grateful for. I stopped a few feet from the way station door. "I want to ask you something," I said. "All right." She set her pen down in the crease of the ledger. She was not braced, not wary. She was simply present. "Have you ever heard of the Bondidearth Luna?" Something shifted in her face. Not recognition, exactly, but a quality of attention that told me the words were not entirely unfamiliar to her. "My grandmother used to talk about it," she said slowly. "She was from the old Ashfin settlements, the ones that remember the pack histories before the garrison system reorganized everything. She said," she paused, arranging the words carefully, "she said that once in many generations, a woman is born whose calm runs so deep that the land itself feels it as home, that the wolves of any pack feel it as home. She said the old name for that bloodline was the Bondidearth." "She told you this?" I said. "She told me I sat too still for a child who was supposed to be afraid of things," Marin said, and there was the faintest trace of something, not quite a smile, but the shape a smile leaves behind. "And that the birds landed on me when I didn't move, and the wolf cubs from the neighboring settlement used to follow me back to the edge of our territory, and that the elders thought it was charming, but she thought it was something else." I looked at her for a long moment. "The Bondidearth bloodline has not produced a Luna in 4 centuries, I said. "The pack historians at Grayfin have a record of the last one. She was called the Stillwater Luna. The wolves recognized her before any ceremony or seal could be arranged." Marin looked at me steadily. "You're telling me something," she said, "and I think you're about to tell me what." "My wolves have not come freely to the outer courtyard in 9 years, I said. "They don't come to people, they never have, not any person I've brought to this hold, not any woman my council has arranged presentations for. They came to you, all 12 of them, over 4 days. And Kale," I stopped. "The silver one," she said quietly. "The lead wolf, yes. He hasn't gone to anyone since." I found the words harder to arrange than I had expected. "Since my father died. He bonded to my father the way lead wolves bond to alphas. When my father died, he stopped going to people. He goes to me, and that is all." She was quiet for a moment. "He sat very close to me today," she said. "He didn't touch me, he just sat and looked at my hands." "I know," I said. "I was watching from the passage window." She looked at her own hands, still holding the ledger. Then she looked back at me with that quality of quiet that was not emptiness and not distance, but something else entirely. A person who had learned to hold very large things in a very steady way. "What does it mean?" she asked, not as if she didn't know, as if she wanted to hear me say it. "It means," I said, "that I would like very much to not send you away when the road clears." The lamp in the way station doorway burned between us. The fog had reached the outer wall. Somewhere in the inner pen, one of the wolves made a sound, low, comfortable, the sound they make when they are settled for the night. Maren looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at the herb bed, the straight border stones, the smoothed gravel over the new planting. "I planted winter marjoram in the 3rd row," she said. "It won't come up for 6 weeks." "I know," I said. "It would be a shame for no one to check on it." "It would," I said. She looked at me again, quietly, the way she looked at everything. "All right," she said. The bond completed the following morning. I had not planned for it to be public. These things are rarely planned, they arrive when they arrive, by the oldest logic, which has never cared about convenience or ceremony or who happens to be standing in the courtyard when the moment comes. It was shortly after the first bell. Voss had assembled the morning garrison rotation in the outer courtyard, 12 soldiers in 2 lines, the standard first light accounting. The 3 registered merchants were preparing to depart now that the road runner had brought word of clearing. Henrik was by the passage door with his clipboard. 2 of my senior council members had come down to see the merchants off, which was a minor courtesy that I had forgotten to cancel. Maren was at the herb bed. She had come down early, before the garrison rotation, before the merchants, before anyone, with a small watering vessel from the kitchen, because she wanted to give the new planting its first water. She was on her knees in the mud at the edge of the herb bed when the garrison formed up, and she did not move, because she was not in the way, and she was not going to interrupt her watering for a courtesy she had not been part of. I was on the stairs. I saw it the way you see something that has already been happening for longer than you realized, and the moment you see it, you understand that the only question was never whether but when. Cale crossed the courtyard. He had been in the far corner of the outer pen. I had seen him there when I came onto the stairs, silver-gray in the morning light, seemingly unconcerned with the garrison formation or the departing merchants or any of it. Then, between one breath and the next, he simply walked. Not hurried, not dramatic. He walked the full length of the courtyard in his slow, silver-weight way, past the garrison lines, past the merchants with their mules, past Voss standing at the head of the formation with his ledger, and his expression of a man who has decided that this is probably nothing. He walked to Maren. She looked up from the herb bed. She set the watering vessel down. She sat back on her heels and looked at him, Cale, the laid wolf, who was standing 3 feet from her, and then 2 feet, and then 1, and then his great silver head came down and he placed it in her lap. He sighed. Not the sigh of a wolf at rest. The sigh of a wolf that has been looking for something for a very long time and has, at last, put it down. The mate mark bloomed on both my wrists at the same moment. It bloomed on both of hers. I felt it the way my grandfather described it. Not a burning, not a pain, but a warmth that moves from the inside out, as if something that was always there has simply decided to make itself visible. I looked at my wrists. The mark was the deep gold of old heartwood, the branching pattern that Grafen's bonded line carries, the same mark my father had carried and his father before him. I looked across the courtyard at Maren. She was looking at her own wrists, at the same mark, the same gold, the same branching pattern, with the expression of a person receiving confirmation of something they had suspected for a long time, but were too careful to say aloud. Then she looked up at me. The garrison was very quiet. I came down the stairs. I walked the length of the courtyard the way Cale had walked it, not hurrying, not performing, simply moving toward the thing I was moving toward. I was aware of Voss to my left, motionless. I was aware of my 2 council members by the passage door. I was aware of Henrik, who had stopped writing on his clipboard. I knelt in the mud at the edge of the herb bed. Cale had not moved. His head was still in Marin's lap, heavy in content, his pale eyes half closed. The rest of the wolves, all 11 remaining, had come through the inner gate in the time it had taken me to cross the courtyard. They were forming a ring, loose and unhurried, the way pack wolves form a ring around something that belongs to them. Marin looked at me. She looked at my wrists, she looked at her own. "It's the bonded earth mark," I said quietly, not a question. "It's the same as yours," she said, equally quiet. "Yes." She reached out with her right hand, the one with the mark still warming on the inner wrist, and placed it against my left wrist. Warmth moved from the point of contact outward, clean and deep and certain, like water finding the shape of a vessel it was always meant to fill. "I planted winter marjoram," she said, and there was the smile now, not faint, not a shadow of one, but the real thing, small and unhurried and entirely her own. "I know," I said. "You'll be here when it comes up." From behind me, I heard the sound of something hitting the ground. I did not need to look to know it was Voss's ledger. The expulsion order folded inside it. The order he had never had time to execute. The order by which the woman beside me had been classified as a packless wanderer with no garrison bond and no verifiable claim to shelter at Grafenhold. I heard Voss clear his throat. I did not turn around. The ceremonies were arranged over the following weeks. They were not lengthy, and they were not elaborate. Grafenhold has never been a place that does things elaborately, and the pack bond had been completed in front of enough witnesses that the law's requirements were largely already met. The oldest law of the wolf packs predates the garrison system by 600 years. If the bonded line's wolves recognize a mate, and the mark blooms, the recognition is binding. All the ceremony in the world is formality, and Grafen has always preferred to keep formality brief. Marin became Luna of Grafenhold on a morning with clear light and no fog in the inner hall, with the 12 wolves present because they went where she went now, and no one had yet suggested they shouldn't. My counsel was there. Henrik was there, with a new clipboard and a better ledger. The 3 registered merchants had long since gone on their way. Voss was there. He had come to my study 2 days after the courtyard morning, and stood in the doorway with the expression of a man deciding whether to say something difficult. I had waited. "The expulsion order," he said finally. "It was procedurally correct, based on the information I had at the time." "It was," I said. "I didn't have complete information." "No one did." He stood there for another moment. Then he said, "She fixed the herb bed." "She did." "The winter marjoram is coming in already. Henrik says it's early." He paused. "I don't know much about herbs." "Neither do I said. He nodded once and left. He was at the ceremony. He stood at the back with his hands behind his back and his expression carefully neutral, the expression of a garrison commander who has filed the relevant information and is updating his procedures accordingly. When the pack bond was formally declared and my counsel bowed, he bowed with them. Marin noticed. She notices most things. She is, I have come to understand, the kind of person who pays attention to everything without appearing to pay attention to anything. She notices the way the light changes, the way a wolf holds its ears when it is worried versus when it is content, the way a seed planted on the north side of a wall needs a different kind of patience than one planted in full sun. Afterward, when the hall had cleared and it was only the two of us and Kale stretched across the hearthstone, and the winter marjoram in a small pot on the window ledge. She had brought it inside once it was tall enough, which Henrik recorded in his clipboard under botanical items. Inner hall, permanent, she said. He looked relieved. Vas. He is a man who does not like making mistakes, she said. He didn't think he had made one, but it troubled him anyway, I think. I considered this. He is a careful man, I said. Most people who make rigid rules are, she said. She was looking at the window at the small pot of marjoram in the light. It's how they manage the feeling that things might go wrong. The rules feel like control. A pause. The trouble is that things that go right don't always come with credentials. I looked at her in the firelight. No, I said, they don't. She turned from the window and looked at me, and in her look was the same thing that had been there from the first day in the courtyard, that quality of stillness that was not blankness, not distance, not absence but presence. A complete and unhurried presence that asked nothing and offered everything and let the world be whatever it was and simply stayed. I had ruled Grafenhold for 11 years. I had made decisions in flood seasons and border disputes and contested succession, and the long grinding weight of governance that nobody tells you about when they put the crown on your head. I had made decisions when I was tired, and when I was wrong, and when I could not see far enough ahead to know if what I was doing would hold. I had never, in all of that, felt the particular steadiness of having something beside me that was not there because it had to be, not there because it had been arranged, not there because any law or ceremony or seal had required it. She was there because Kale had laid his head in her lap. She was there because the oldest, most honest judges in my kingdom had made their determination before I could argue with it. She was there because she had pressed a loose stone back into the border of a broken herb bed in a courtyard where she owed nothing to anyone, because the stone was where it belonged, and she saw no reason not to put it there. And now she was here in the inner hall in the firelight, in the first winter of something that would outlast all the rules and ledgers and garrison protocols and border assessments in Voss's very careful files. Kale made a sound from the hearthstone, comfortable, settled. Marin reached over and took my hand, not ceremonially, not performing anything. She just reached over and took my hand the way she did everything, quietly, without asking whether she was allowed, because she had already determined it was the right thing and she saw no reason to complicate it. My wrists were warm. The marjoram on the window ledge was small and new and growing toward the light, the way things grow when they are given a border that holds and soil that is patient and time enough to become what they were always going to be. Outside, the Ashfin lay quiet under the first stars of the clear night, and Grafenhold was exactly as it had always been, stone and fog and wolf country, and the long history of a bloodline that had been looking, for 400 years, for a woman whose calm was deep enough for it to rest in. She had arrived with seeds in her pockets and mud on her boots, and no garrison seal. She had fixed the herb bed because it needed fixing. And everything else, the mark, the wolves, the oldest law, the pack that had finally come home to the stone ledge in the outer courtyard, had simply followed, the way things follow when the root is right and the border holds and the ground is good.